Magnum XL200 opened in 1989 as the world's first full-circuit hypercoaster. Since then, we have seen dozens of parks take a shot at building a world-class hypercoaster. And the coasters that make up this top 10 have all been huge game changers for their respective parks and should be bucket list coasters for you. Number 10, Apollo's Chariot, Busch Gardens, Williamsburg. Height 170 feet, drop 210 feet. The original B&M hypercoaster still has it. While some of you might be scratching your heads as to why and how I could place Apollo over Nitro, which I get, but in my opinion, I just really enjoy Apollo more. The layout, the placement, the setting, that turnaround, and I love the unique curved drop that dives under the first drop. Just like Raging Bull, the little pre-drop right after the lift hill just adds some character to Apollo's Chariot and provides some intense out-of-your-seat airtime going down that first drop. And besides, back row night rides on this are an absolute must. To make this top 10 a little more specific, I'm only going to focus on the hypercoasters that do not feature inversions. Now here are some honorable mention hypercoasters that didn't quite make this top 10. Raging Bull, Six Flags Great America. I remember when Six Flags Great America first announced Raging Bull, and since my very first ride on this monster, I've become a huge fan. But sadly, I've been on a lot of hypers since Raging Bull was first introduced. Goliath, Six Flags Magic Mountain. This coaster really doesn't do a whole lot. While I love the setting and placement of Goliath, it really is a pretty forgettable coaster. Mamba, Worlds of Fun. Morgan knows how to create a fun-filled hypercoaster, and while Mamba, in my opinion, is nothing to really write home about, it's still a fun and enjoyable coaster that dominates the Worlds of Fun skyline. Titan, Six Flags Over Texas. While this is a better overall coaster than Goliath, thanks to the additional helix, I just couldn't find room for it on my top 10. Intimidator, Carowinds. I know I should probably give my home park some love, but this coaster just slowly makes it into my honorable mention. Maybe it would be on my list if it had a stronger ending. Nitro, Six Flags Great Adventure. Amazing layout, good airtime, and a beautiful color scheme. Of course, when not faded. But there's something about Nitro that never really stuck with me. And finally, Steel Force, Dorney Park. Even though Steel Force offers pretty much an identical layout as to Mamba, I still prefer the setting of this coaster over the hyper at Worlds of Fun. If you want to see more videos like this, then please give it a thumbs up, because each one really helps the performance of the video and the channel. Also, don't forget to check out my merch store, themeparkpredictions.com, for some cool and affordable coaster merch. So what exactly is a hypercoaster? Is it a coaster that features a lift hill of over 200 feet? Or is it a coaster that offers a drop of over 200 feet? Now for this video, I'm going to have a mixture of both for the sake of the argument. Number 9, Diamondback, located at Kings Island. Height 230 feet, drop 215 feet. Diamondback was exactly what Kings Island needed to kick things off for the park over the next decade, because this coaster is just plain fun. Even though I do not care for the stagger seating trains, the layout in the woods makes up for this one flaw of Diamondback. I also love how this coaster just towers over Rivertown and really shows its dominance. In my opinion, there's not a bad thing about Diamondback besides those trains. Number 8, Candemonium, Hershey Park. Height 210 feet and a drop of 210 feet. I had the privilege to ride Candemonium back in August of this past year, and I really enjoyed it. From start to finish, a solid coaster that offers a very odd brake run setup in my opinion. Just like Orion, I feel like this coaster just ends too soon. Now what I like about Candemonium is the awesome color scheme, the airtime, the turnaround, the speed hill, and of course, the uniquely banked hill that comes after the upward helix. Hershey Park has a winner on their hands with Candemonium. Number 7, Superman Ride of Steel, Six Flags America. Height 197 feet, drop 205 feet. Now before making this video, I never realized that Superman was only 197 feet tall, but according to Roller Coaster Database, it is. And all these stats in this video come from RCDB.com since it's a trustworthy and consistent source. Superman is an awesome intimate hypercoaster that is a mere clone of the one at Darien Lake, which I'm a little bit bitter about because during my one and only visit to Darien Lake, Superman was closed. While the one at the Maryland park might not be as good, it still offered some insane airtime, a great showcase of speed, and I love the helixes. But my favorite part of Superman is the low to the ground right turn after the first drop. It really is awesome. Number 6. Magnum XL 200, located at the Cedar Point. Height 205 feet, drop 194 feet. Cedar Point changed the roller coaster game like no park has ever done before when they announced on August 16, 1988 that they were going to add a new record-breaking roller coaster, a type that no one has ever seen before. And it's crazy to think that this $8 million roller coaster at the time was the initial inspiration for the hypercoaster as we know it. Ron Toomer designed his best coaster that could not have come at a better time. Magnum features by far the best views of any coaster on this list, and the greatest stretch of airtime hills, period. Magnum's return leg back to the station is just wowed, especially when you take a ride in Magnum's Magic Seat, which is the first car, row 3. Number 5, Goliath, Six Flags Over Georgia. Height 200 feet, drop 175 feet. Goliath is one of the most unique B&Ms you're ever gonna ride. I know this placement might be a little surprising for some, but I really do love Goliath. The way the park placed this coaster into the existing park is just crazy, especially because half the coaster is located outside the actual park. The lift hill of Goliath is located on the tallest point of the park, and the largest drop comes on the second hill. Basically, Six Flags Over Georgia mapped out the hills in the park perfectly for this coaster. What I appreciate the most about Goliath is the 540-degree helix for the coaster's turnaround. The train really flies through this element, and after that, you're going to experience more airtime hills and awesome turns leading back to the station. Number 4, Mako, SeaWorld Orlando. Height 200 feet and a drop of 200 feet. The king of B&M hypers here in America, because Mako is really that good, even if it offers a mid-course brake run. Every time I ride Mako in the back row, I always forget just how good that first drop is. It really takes me by surprise every time. Mako is beautifully placed along one of the retention ponds in the back of the park, and that really just adds to how great this coaster is. You're going to experience tons of airtime hills, and even with the mid-course brake run, Mako still offers a solid ending. The one element on Mako, besides the first drop, that needs to be showcased is the quick turn to the right that leads right into the speed hill. This transition, for me, doesn't feel like you're riding a B&M. Number 3, Phantom's Revenge, Kennywood, has a height of 160 feet with a drop of 228 feet. Some of you may or may not consider Phantom's Revenge a true hypercoaster, and that's cool, I get it. But one thing we can all agree on is that this coaster is a legit airtime filled masterpiece. Trust me, the POVs do not do this awesome Arrow/Morgan coaster justice. And another thing you need to know, there are Phantom rides during the day, and then there are Phantom rides at night, and this is when the coaster just seems to take it up a notch. That drop down the side of the hill through the park's classic Thunderbolt is a one-of-a-kind experience. Now it's time for the top 2 hypercoasters that I've ridden before. Number 2, Superman the Ride, located at Six Flags New England. Features a height of 208 feet and a drop of 221 feet. There is no better layout for any hypercoaster out there, period. And I don't know if there ever will be one either. Superman the Ride has had quite the identity crisis over the last decade or so, because the coaster started off as Superman Ride of Steel, then it was rethemed to Bizarro, and now it's just Superman the Ride. Due to the strict laws in Massachusetts, Intamin had to create a new restraint for the ride, and that led to this world-class #1 coaster falling in people's rankings, including mine. Superman would easily take the #1 spot on this list, but those restraints just take away from the coaster too much for me in my opinion. I know the rattle is pretty noticeable, but being honest, a little rattle has never really bothered me when it comes to coasters. I wonder if Intamin could supply the park with new trains that feature the restraints like those found on Hyperion, Velocicoaster, and Pantheon. And the best hypercoaster that I've ever been on before belongs to Hershey Park, and that would be Skyrush. Features a lift hill of 200 feet and a drop of 212 feet. Intamin is just insane. Skyrush is pure adrenaline from start to finish, and everything about this hypercoaster is just crazy. From the steep cable lift to the almost painful airtime to its condensed figure 8 layout, Skyrush is an out-of-your-seat adrenaline rush. Funny thing is, just like Superman, Hershey Park needs to find a way to get better trains for this awesome coaster, because the restraints are nothing to write home about, but the quick pace coaster is very high up in my rankings, and I'm willing to go through a little bit of pain just so I can experience some of the best airtime in the world. So that is how I rank the traditional hypercoasters that I've been on. What are some of your favorite hypercoasters? Be sure to tell me in the comments. As always, thank you so much for watching. Don't forget to smile today, think positive, and keep riding coasters.